Hey everyone, welcome to Midnight Mystic Stories. I noticed a lot of you who are watching and enjoying the content aren't subscribed yet. If you love spine-chilling stories, creepy encounters, and unexplained mysteries, make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell. It really helps the channel grow and helps us keep bringing more of the content you love. And be sure to comment below where you are tuning in from. Thank you and enjoy the video. Check this out. I never thought I'd be sharing this, but something happened last year, and it's still messing with my head. It all started with a dating app, like most of these stories do, right? But trust me, this one's different. It wasn't a catfish or some dude trying to sell me crypto. It was weirder, much weirder. I'd been on Hinge for a while, swiping through the same faces, same boring prompts. Then one night, I saw her profile. Sarah. Her pictures were artsy, like she was trying too hard to be cool. Black and white photos, moody landscapes, stuff like that. But there was something about her eyes in one of the photos, a kind of intensity, that made me stop. Her prompt answers were quirky, a little dark, but funny. I figured, why not? What did I have to lose? We matched. We started chatting, and things moved fast. Like really fast. She was super into me, which was flattering, but also a little unsettling. She'd text me constantly, asking about my day, telling me how much she liked my sense of humor. I thought maybe I'd finally found someone who genuinely got me. We made plans to meet up at a coffee shop near my apartment. The day of the date, I was actually nervous, which was rare for me. I got there early, grabbed a table, and waited. She was late, but I figured traffic, no big deal. Then, she texted me, saying she was running behind and suggested we meet at her place instead. She lived only a few blocks away. So I was like, whatever, why not? It's just coffee. Huge mistake. Her apartment was in this old, run-down building, the kind that probably had rats the size of chihuahuas. The hallway smelled like dust and stale cigarette smoke. I found her door and knocked. She opened it almost immediately, like she'd been standing right behind it, waiting. Sarah looked different than her pictures. Her eyes were even more intense in person, almost too bright. She was wearing this long, flowy dress that seemed way too dramatic for a casual coffee date. But whatever, I was already there. The apartment was strange. It was dimly lit, with heavy curtains blocking out most of the sunlight. The furniture was old and mismatched, like she'd gotten it all from different thrift stores. There were candles everywhere, which I thought was a little much for the afternoon, and the air was thick with the smell of incense, the kind that made my nose itch. She led me to the living room, which had a low table with 2 cushions on the floor. No chairs. She sat down and gestured for me to do the same. I felt a little awkward, sitting on the floor like that, but I went with it. She offered me tea, not coffee, and it tasted weird, almost medicinal. We talked for a while, but something felt off. She asked me all these personal questions, probing into my past, my fears, my dreams. It felt like an interrogation, not a date. And her eyes, they never left mine. It was like she was trying to see right through me. Then, she started talking about her interests. She was really into occult stuff, tarot cards, astrology, all that new age nonsense. She started pulling out these tarot cards, asking if she could read my future. I laughed it off, but she insisted. She laid out the cards, her eyes gleaming in the candlelight. She started interpreting them, telling me about my hidden potential, my inner demons, all this vague, fortune-teller stuff. But then, she said something that made my blood run cold. I see a darkness in you, she said, her voice barely a whisper. A shadow that you've been trying to hide, but it's growing stronger. I scoffed, telling her she was being ridiculous. But she just stared at me, her eyes like black holes. She reached out and took my hand, her touch surprisingly cold. I can help you, she said. I can help you embrace your true self. That's when I knew I had to get out of there. I made some excuse about having to leave, and she didn't try to stop me. She just smiled, that same unsettling smile, and let me walk out the door. I practically ran out of that apartment building, gasping for fresh air. I felt like I'd just escaped some kind of cult. I blocked her number, deleted her profile, and tried to forget the whole thing. But I couldn't. For weeks, I kept seeing her everywhere. Or at least, I thought I did. In crowds, on the street, even in my own apartment. It was probably just my imagination, but it freaked me out. Then, one night, I had this dream. I was back in her apartment, sitting on the floor, staring into her eyes. But this time, her eyes weren't human anymore. They were like the eyes of a predator, cold and reptilian. And she was smiling a wide, sinister smile that revealed rows of sharp teeth. I woke up in a cold sweat, my heart pounding in my chest. I couldn't shake the feeling that she was still watching me. I decided I needed to do something. I went back to her apartment building, hoping to find some clue, some explanation for what had happened. But when I got there, the building was gone. It was just an empty lot, like it had never existed. I asked around, but no one seemed to remember the building or Sarah. It was like she'd been erased from existence. I started to think I was going crazy. Maybe I'd imagined the whole thing. Maybe it was just a really vivid dream. Then, a few months later, I was scrolling through Hinge again, against my better judgment, and I saw her. Same pictures, same prompts, same unsettling eyes. But her name was different. It wasn't Sarah anymore. It was my mother's maiden name. I froze. My blood ran cold. I remembered something my grandmother used to tell me, about a family curse, about a woman who could change her appearance, who preyed on unsuspecting men. I knew, with a chilling certainty, that it wasn't just a bad date. It was something much, much worse. And I was next. I still see her, sometimes. In crowds, on the street, in my dreams. She's always watching, always waiting. And I know one day, she'll come for me. I'm still trying to figure out what to do. But I needed to tell someone. Maybe it'll help, maybe it won't. Either way, I'm not sleeping well these days. I keep the lights on, and I double-check the locks. I even started carrying around a little pocket knife. Sounds crazy, right? Well, maybe it is. But I swear this is all true. Every single word. And I'm terrified. You know how sometimes you get that feeling? That something's just off? Like a wrong note in a perfect song? Yeah, that's been my life for the past couple of months, ever since I downloaded Hinge. I wasn't really looking for anything serious, just someone to grab coffee with, maybe catch a movie. But what I found was way creepier than any bad date. It started like any other dating app story. Swiping left, swiping right, the occasional awkward opener. Then I matched with Sarah. Her profile was pretty standard, cute pictures, hiking, dogs, you know the drill. We started chatting, and things seemed normal, maybe even promising. We had a few things in common, similar senses of humor, and the conversation flowed easily. We texted for a few days before deciding to meet up. She suggested this little coffee shop downtown, a place I'd never been to before. It was tucked away on a side street, dimly lit, with mismatched furniture and an overall vibe that was trying too hard to be quirky. Still, I was excited, or at least cautiously optimistic. Sarah was already there when I arrived, sitting at a small table near the back. She looked exactly like her pictures, maybe even a little prettier. We hugged hello, and I immediately felt a weird tension. It wasn't a bad tension, not exactly. More like an awareness. Like I was being watched, even though there was no one else around. The date started out fine. We talked about our jobs, our hobbies, the usual first date stuff. But as the conversation went on, things started to get strange. She kept asking me really personal questions, stuff that I wouldn't normally share with someone I'd just met. Like, really digging into my past relationships, my family history, my deepest fears. I tried to steer the conversation in a different direction, but she always managed to bring it back to me. And the way she looked at me, it was intense. Like she was trying to see right through me, to understand something I didn't even understand myself. After a couple of hours, I started to feel really uncomfortable. I made up an excuse about having an early meeting the next day and suggested we wrap things up. She seemed disappointed, but she didn't argue. We walked out of the coffee shop together, and she gave me a hug goodbye. I had a really nice time, she said, her voice almost a whisper. We should do this again. I mumbled something noncommittal and hurried to my car. As I drove home, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being followed. I kept checking my rearview mirror, but I didn't see anything. Still, the feeling persisted, a cold knot in my stomach. The next day, I tried to put the date out of my mind. I went to work, hung out with friends, tried to act like everything was normal. But Sarah's questions kept replaying in my head, her intense gaze burning into my memory. That evening, I got a text from her. "I've been thinking about you all day." It read, "I can't wait to see you again." I hesitated, then texted back, "Thanks, but I'm pretty busy this week." She replied almost instantly, "Don't worry, I'll make time for you." That's when things started to escalate. She started texting me constantly, sending me messages at all hours of the day and night. She knew where I was, what I was doing, even who I was with. It was like she was always watching me, even though I couldn't see her. I tried to block her number, but she kept finding new ways to contact me. She'd create fake profiles on social media, email me from anonymous accounts, even leave notes on my car. It was relentless, terrifying. I started to feel like I was losing my mind. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I couldn't focus on anything. I was constantly looking over my shoulder, afraid of what Sarah might do next. One night, I was lying in bed, trying to fall asleep, when I heard a noise outside my window. I got up and peeked through the curtains. There she was, standing in my yard, staring up at my window. I froze, paralyzed with fear. She just stood there, motionless, for what felt like an eternity. Then, slowly, she raised her hand and waved. I slammed the curtains shut and ran to the other side of the apartment. I called the police, but by the time they arrived, she was gone. They took a report, but they didn't seem to take me seriously. "Probably just a harmless admirer," one of the officers said. Harmless? I knew better. Sarah wasn't harmless. She was obsessed, and she was getting closer. I decided I had to do something. I couldn't live like this, constantly looking over my shoulder, afraid of my own shadow. I started doing some research on Sarah, trying to find out who she was, where she came from. I discovered that her Hinge profile was fake. The pictures she used were stolen from some random Instagram account. She didn't have any social media presence, no online footprint whatsoever. It was like she didn't exist. But then I found something. Buried deep in an online forum, I found a post from a woman claiming that she had been stalked by someone named Sarah. The woman described the same obsessive behavior, the same relentless pursuit. She said that Sarah had completely ruined her life, driven her to the brink of insanity. The woman had disappeared a few years ago. No one knew what had happened to her. I felt a chill run down my spine. Was Sarah responsible for the woman's disappearance? Was I next? I knew I had to get away, to disappear before she could find me. I packed a bag, grabbed my keys, and headed for the door. As I reached for the doorknob, I heard a voice behind me. "Going somewhere?" I turned around and saw Sarah standing in my living room. How did she get in? I didn't even hear her. She smiled, a slow, chilling smile that sent shivers down my spine. "I've been waiting for you," she said. I tried to run, but she was too fast. She grabbed my arm, her grip surprisingly strong. "We're going to be together forever," she whispered. I struggled, but it was no use. She was stronger than me, more determined. She dragged me out of the apartment, down the stairs, and into the street. I don't remember much of what happened after that. Everything went black. I woke up in a hospital bed, my head throbbing, my body aching. A doctor told me that I had been found unconscious in a park, suffering from severe dehydration and exhaustion. I told the police everything, about Sarah, about the stalking, about the woman who had disappeared. They listened politely, but they didn't seem convinced. They said they would look into it, but I could tell they didn't believe me. I was released from the hospital a few days later. I went back to my apartment, but it didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a trap, a place where Sarah could find me again. I decided to move, to start over somewhere new. I packed my bags and left town, determined to put Sarah behind me. I found a small apartment in a quiet town, far away from everything I knew. I got a new job, made some new friends, tried to build a normal life. For a while it worked. I started to feel like I was finally free, that I had escaped Sarah's grasp. But then, one day, I got a text message. It was an unknown number, but the message was clear. "I told you we would be together forever." I froze, my blood running cold. How did she find me? How did she know where I was? I looked out the window, scanning the street for any sign of her. But there was nothing, no one. I deleted the message and blocked the number. I tried to tell myself it was just a prank, a coincidence. But I knew better. Sarah was still out there, watching me, waiting for me. And I knew, with a chilling certainty, that she would never give up. Here's the twist, though. A few weeks after that text, I started having these vivid dreams. Dreams of Sarah, but not the Sarah I met on Hinge. This Sarah was different. Younger, more vulnerable. In my dreams, I saw her as a little girl, abandoned and alone. I saw her struggling with mental illness, desperately seeking connection, but always pushing people away. Then, one night, I dreamt that Sarah was me. Or, more accurately, that I was Sarah. I experienced her pain, her loneliness, her obsessive thoughts. I felt the crushing weight of her mental illness, the desperate need for control. I woke up in a cold sweat, gasping for air. It was then that I realized the truth. Sarah wasn't stalking me. I was stalking myself. I had created her, this fictional persona, as a way to cope with my own insecurities and anxieties. The Hinge profile, the obsessive texts, the feeling of being watched. It was all in my head. I had projected my own fears and desires onto this imaginary person, and she had become my tormentor. The Sarah that I was running from wasn't some external threat. She was a manifestation of my own inner demons, and the only way to escape her was to confront them, to acknowledge the pain and loneliness that I had been trying to suppress. It's been a long and difficult journey, but I'm finally starting to heal. I'm in therapy, working through my issues and learning to accept myself, flaws and all. I still get the occasional text from Sarah, but now I know it's just my own mind playing tricks on me, and I'm learning to ignore her, to silence the voice of fear and self-doubt that has haunted me for so long. The Hinge app is long gone, deleted from my phone. I'm not sure if I'll ever try online dating again. But one thing I know for sure, I'll never create another Sarah. I'll never let my fears control me again. I am in control. I'm not usually one for sharing this kind of stuff, mainly because people think I'm totally making it up. But whatever, figured I'd throw this out there. See if anyone else has had anything similar happen. It's about this girl I met on Hinge last summer. Freaked me out big time. I was bored, right? End of summer. All my usual buddies were out of town, hitting up festivals or whatever. I swiped right on, like everyone. Then this girl, Sarah, matched with me. Her profile was pretty basic. A couple of pics with friends. One of her hiking. Typical stuff. But there was something about her eyes, man. They looked, I don't know, super intense. Like she was looking right through the camera. We started chatting, and she seemed cool. Into the same kind of music as me. Like the same weird movies. She was a bit off, though. Like, she'd ask these really personal questions right away. Stuff like, what's your biggest fear? Or, what's the darkest thing you've ever done? I chalked it up to her being upfront, I guess. We decided to meet up at this coffee shop downtown. I got there first and waited. When she walked in, I almost didn't recognize her. Her pictures didn't do her justice. She was way prettier in person, but also different. She had this nervous energy about her, like she was constantly looking over her shoulder. We talked for a couple of hours, and the whole time I couldn't shake this feeling that she was holding something back. She'd start to say something, then cut herself off. She kept glancing at the window, like she was expecting someone. I tried to brush it off, but it was getting to me. After coffee, she suggested we go for a walk in the park. It was getting dark, and the park was pretty deserted. But I was trying to be cool, you know? So I agreed. As we walked, the conversation got even weirder. She started talking about dreams, and how they can be more real than reality. She said she had this recurring dream about a house in the woods, and that she felt like she'd lived there before. I was getting a little creeped out, but I figured she was just being artsy or something. Then she stopped walking and looked right at me. Have you ever felt like you're being watched? She asked. I laughed, trying to lighten the mood. All the time, I said, especially when I'm trying to parallel park. She didn't laugh. She just stared at me with those intense eyes. No, I mean really watched, she said. Like someone is always there, just out of sight. I didn't know what to say. I felt a chill run down my spine, even though it was a warm night. We kept walking, and the park got darker and darker. The trees started to look like shadowy figures, and every rustle of leaves made me jump. I started to regret suggesting this walk. Then Sarah stopped again. She pointed to a patch of woods off the path. "That's it," she said. "That's where the house is in my dream." I squinted, but I couldn't see anything. It was just trees and shadows. "There's no house there," I said. "Yes, there is," she insisted. "I can feel it." She started to walk towards the woods, and I grabbed her arm. "Hey, maybe we should just head back," I said. "It's getting late." She pulled her arm away and gave me this look like I'd betrayed her. "You don't understand," she said. "I have to see it." And then she ran into the woods. I stood there for a second, not knowing what to do. I didn't want to go in after her, but I couldn't just leave her there. So I took a deep breath and followed. The woods were even darker than I thought. The trees were so thick that I could barely see the sky. I called out her name, but there was no answer. I kept walking, pushing through the underbrush, tripping over roots. I was starting to panic. What if she got lost? What if something happened to her? Then I saw it, a light in the distance. I ran towards the light, and as I got closer, I could make out the shape of a house. It was old and run down, with boarded-up windows and peeling paint. It looked like something out of a horror movie. I walked up to the front door and knocked. No answer. I tried the handle, and to my surprise, it was unlocked. I hesitated for a moment, then pushed the door open and stepped inside. The house was even creepier on the inside. It was dark and dusty, and the air was thick with the smell of mildew. There were cobwebs everywhere, and the floorboards creaked with every step. I called out Sarah's name again, but still no answer. I started to walk through the house, room by room. Each room was more unsettling than the last. I found old furniture covered in sheets, broken mirrors, and strange symbols painted on the walls. I was about to give up when I heard a noise coming from the basement. I walked over to the basement door and slowly opened it. The stairs leading down were steep and dark, and I couldn't see anything at the bottom. I took a deep breath and started to descend. As I got closer to the bottom, I could hear a faint humming sound. It was coming from a room at the end of the basement. I reached the bottom of the stairs and walked towards the room. The humming got louder and louder. I reached the doorway and peered inside. Sarah was standing in the middle of the room, facing away from me. She was wearing a long white dress, and her hair was down. She was humming softly and swaying back and forth. I stepped into the room and called her name. She didn't turn around. I walked closer and put my hand on her shoulder. She still didn't turn around. I gently turned her around to face me. It wasn't Sarah. It was a woman, but not the girl I met at the coffee shop. This woman was older, with wrinkles around her eyes and gray hair. She was wearing the same dress as Sarah, and she had the same intense eyes. "Who are you?" I asked. The woman smiled. "I'm Sarah," she said. "I've been waiting for you." I was confused. "But you're not the Sarah I met on Hinge." The woman laughed. "Oh, but I am," she said. "I've been many Sarahs. This house needs them." She raised her hand, and I saw something glinting in her palm. A knife. I tried to run, but she grabbed my arm. The last thing I saw was the knife coming towards me. I woke up in my bed. Sun was streaming through the window. It was all a dream, right? I went to make some coffee, checking my phone. No new messages. I opened Hinge. Sarah's profile was gone. I searched for her name. No luck. It was like she never existed. Then, I went to grab a mug from the cupboard. At the back, tucked away behind all the other mugs, was one I'd never seen before. Old, chipped, with a strange symbol painted on it. The same symbol I saw on the walls of that house. I dropped the mug. It shattered on the floor. And then I remembered. I'd seen that house before. Not in a dream. In a picture. A picture my grandma had of the old family home. A home my family had abandoned generations ago because of the stories. Stories about a woman named Sarah, who lured people to their doom. The thing is, my last name? It's Sarah. And my middle name? It's the same as my grandma's first name. The original Sarah of the stories. The house didn't need Sarahs, it needed me. I am Sarah. The cycle continues. Okay, so listen up. I'm not usually one to believe in all that supernatural hooey, but something happened a few months ago that seriously messed with my head. It started like any other dumb dating app story, but trust me, it went sideways fast. I'm still not sure what the heck happened, but here it is, my weird Hinge horror story. It all started innocently enough. I just moved into this old apartment building downtown. It was a total steal, rent-wise, probably because the place was kind of a dump, but hey, a guy's gotta save money, right? So, I'm swiping on Hinge, bored out of my mind on a Friday night, when I see this girl, Sarah. Her profile was pretty basic. A couple of selfies, hiking pictures, and a blurb about loving indie movies and craft beer. Nothing too exciting, but she seemed cute and normal. I swiped right. She matched, and we started chatting. We talked about the usual stuff, jobs, hobbies, what we were looking for. She seemed really nice, a little shy maybe, but definitely someone I could see myself hanging out with. We decided to meet up for coffee the following week. The coffee date was fine. Not amazing, not terrible. Sarah was pretty quiet, but she laughed at my jokes, and we had a decent conversation. I got the feeling she was holding back a little, like she wasn't really letting me see the real her. But I figured maybe she was just nervous. I mean, dating is awkward, right? At the end of the date, I walked her back to her apartment. She lived a few blocks away, in an even older building than mine. It was one of those gothic-looking places with gargoyles and a creepy, overgrown courtyard. As we stood outside her building, saying goodbye, she suddenly seemed a lot more relaxed. "I had a really nice time," she said, finally making eye contact. "Maybe we could do this again?" I said sure, gave her a quick hug, and headed back to my place. As I walked away, I glanced back and saw her standing in the doorway of her building, watching me. Something about the way she was standing there, silhouetted against the dim light of the hallway, gave me the creeps. The next few weeks were a blur of dates with Sarah. We went to movies, tried new restaurants, and even went for a hike. She started to open up more, telling me about her family, her dreams, and her fears. But there was still something off. She never talked about her friends, never invited me to her apartment, and always seemed hesitant to make plans too far in advance. One night, after a concert, I walked her back to her place again. This time, as we stood outside her building, I decided to push a little. "Hey," I said, "I was wondering if I could come up for a bit. I'd love to see your place." She hesitated, her eyes darting around nervously. "Oh, I'm really tired," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "And it's kind of a mess. Maybe another time." I tried to hide my disappointment. "Okay, sure," I said, forcing a smile. "Another time." As I walked away, I couldn't shake the feeling that she was hiding something from me. I started to wonder if she was even being honest about who she was. I mean, I knew almost nothing about her life outside of our dates. A few days later, I decided to do some digging. I know it sounds crazy, but I was starting to get seriously concerned. I started with a simple Google search. I typed in her name and the city she lived in. The results were strange. There were a few social media profiles, but they were all abandoned, with no recent activity. There were also a few news articles about a woman with her name who had gone missing several years ago. The articles said that she was last seen near her apartment building. My blood ran cold. Could it be the same Sarah? I kept digging, scouring the internet for any information I could find. I found an old blog post written by someone who claimed to be a former neighbor of Sarah's. The post described Sarah as a recluse, who rarely left her apartment and was rumored to be mentally unstable. The post also mentioned that Sarah's apartment was supposedly haunted. Haunted? I scoffed, but as I read more, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was seriously wrong. I decided to pay a visit to Sarah's apartment building. I figured I could talk to some of her neighbors, see if they knew anything about her. The building was even creepier in the daylight. The gargoyles seemed to leer down at me, and the overgrown courtyard was filled with shadows. I walked inside and found the building manager's office. The manager was an old woman with a stern face and piercing eyes. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice raspy. "Yes," I said. "I'm looking for Sarah. I'm a friend of hers." The manager's eyes narrowed. "Sarah?" she said, her voice dripping with suspicion. "There's no Sarah living here." "Yes, there is," I insisted. She lives in apartment 3B. The manager shook her head. No one lives in 3B, she said. That apartment has been vacant for years. I felt a wave of dizziness wash over me. But I've been dating her for weeks, I stammered. I've walked her home to this building every night. The manager stared at me. Her eyes filled with pity. Young man, she said, I think you've been seeing things. There's no Sarah, and no one lives in 3B. That apartment is cursed. Cursed? I didn't believe in curses, but I couldn't deny what the manager was saying. I decided to check out apartment 3B for myself. I walked down the hallway and found the door. It was old and wooden, with a rusty lock. I tried the handle, and to my surprise, it turned. The door creaked open, revealing a dark and dusty apartment. The air inside was thick with the smell of decay. Cobwebs hung from the ceiling, and the furniture was covered in sheets. I walked further into the apartment, my heart pounding in my chest. As I reached the living room, I saw something that made me gasp. On the wall, scrawled in what looked like blood, were the words, "I'm watching you." I turned to run, but as I did, I saw something move in the corner of the room. A figure emerged from the shadows, and I recognized her instantly. It was Sarah, but she looked different. Her eyes were hollow, her skin was pale, and her hair was matted and tangled. "You found me," she whispered, her voice raspy and distorted. "I've been waiting for you." I backed away, terrified. "Who are you?" I asked. "What do you want?" Sarah smiled, a chilling, unnatural smile. "I'm Sarah," she said, "and I want you to stay with me. Forever." She lunged at me, and I screamed. I stumbled backwards, tripping over a rug and falling to the floor. Sarah hovered over me, her eyes burning into mine. "Don't be afraid," she said. "We'll be together soon." Just then, I heard a loud crash from the hallway. The building manager burst into the apartment, wielding a fire extinguisher. She sprayed Sarah with the extinguisher, and the figure shrieked and recoiled. Sarah slowly faded away, dissipating into nothing. The manager helped me to my feet. "Get out of here," she said, her voice trembling, "and never come back." I didn't need to be told twice. I ran out of the apartment building and didn't stop running until I reached my own place. I locked the door, closed the blinds, and curled up in bed, shaking with fear. I never saw Sarah again. I tried to forget about what happened, but it's been hard. I still have nightmares about her, about the apartment, about the words scrawled on the wall. I moved out of that apartment building downtown not long after that. Couldn't stay there after that whole thing. But here's the thing, the twist that still gets me. I mentioned that Sarah never invited me to her place, right? And that night in apartment 3B, the manager said it was vacant? Well, after all the dust settled, I decided to check my Hinge profile, just to see if her profile was still there. And it was. But something was different. Her location. It wasn't just the city anymore. It was my apartment building. My exact building. She was close. Too close. The profile's still there, by the way. I haven't unmatched. Sometimes, late at night, I swear I can hear a faint scratching at my door. Now I don't go on dating apps anymore. I've learned my lesson. Dating apps can be really weird, man. Okay, so, I never thought I'd be this person. The one telling a super messed up, creepy story about something that happened to them on a dating app. I always rolled my eyes when I heard those stories, thinking, ugh, get a grip. It's just a bad date. But trust me, this was way beyond a bad date. I don't even know how to describe it. I'm still trying to process it all. It all started, innocently enough, on Hinge. I was bored, swiping through profiles. You know the drill. Then I saw him. Ethan. He was, ridiculously good-looking. Think brooding artist type, with intense eyes and a jawline that could cut glass. His profile was kind of vague. Just a few pictures of him looking moody in different settings. A dimly lit cafe. A forest, a record store. No real information about his job or hobbies, which was a little weird, but I figured, whatever. Maybe he's just mysterious. I swiped right. He matched with me instantly. Score, right? We started chatting, and he was super charming. A little intense, maybe, but in a captivating way. He asked a lot of questions about me, my dreams, my fears, stuff most guys on dating apps don't even bother with. He seemed genuinely interested, which was refreshing. He also mentioned that he just moved to town and was looking to explore and make new friends. After a few days of chatting, he asked me out. We decided to meet at this old bookstore downtown. It seemed like a cool, quirky place, and I was excited. When I got there, Ethan was already waiting outside. He looked even better in person. He had this piercing gaze that just made you feel like he was seeing right through you. We went inside, and the bookstore was even cooler than I imagined. It was crammed with old books, floor to ceiling, and had this musty, comforting smell. We spent the next few hours browsing the shelves, talking about our favorite books, and just generally getting to know each other. He was really knowledgeable about literature, and it was fun to debate different authors and genres. There was definitely a spark between us. As the evening went on, the bookstore started to empty out. The lights dimmed, and the atmosphere became more intimate. Ethan suggested we grab some coffee at a nearby cafe. I agreed, and we walked out into the cool night air. The cafe was small and cozy, with soft lighting and comfy armchairs. We ordered our drinks and settled into a corner. We talked for hours, and I felt like I was really connecting with him. He was so open and vulnerable, sharing stories about his past and his struggles. I felt like I could tell him anything. That's when things started to get weird. He started talking about this recurring dream he'd been having. He said it was always the same. He was in a dark forest, surrounded by twisted trees. He could hear whispering all around him, but he couldn't see anyone. Then, a figure would emerge from the shadows, beckoning him closer. He never saw the figure's face, but he felt drawn to it, like it was calling to him. He said the dream was so vivid, it felt real. He was convinced it meant something, but he didn't know what. I tried to reassure him, telling him it was just a dream, that everyone has weird dreams sometimes. But he didn't seem convinced. He looked really shaken up. Then he started asking me about my own dreams. He wanted to know if I ever had dreams that felt real, if I ever felt like I was being called to something. I told him I didn't really remember my dreams. I usually just passed out and woke up. He looked disappointed. As we were leaving the cafe, he grabbed my hand. His touch was cold and clammy. He looked me straight in the eyes and said, "I think we're connected, you and I. I think we're meant to find something together." I didn't know what to say. I was starting to feel really uncomfortable. He walked me back to my car, and as I drove home, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The next day, I got a text from Ethan asking if I wanted to hang out again. I made up an excuse, saying I was busy. I needed some time to process everything. Over the next few days, he kept texting me, calling me. He was getting increasingly persistent. I started to feel like he was pressuring me. I decided to ignore his messages. That's when things escalated. One night, I was home alone, watching TV, when I heard a knock at the door. I looked through the window, and it was Ethan. I didn't answer. He kept knocking, harder and harder. I could hear him yelling my name through the door. I was terrified. I turned off all the lights and hid in my bedroom. He eventually gave up and left. I didn't sleep that night. I was too scared. The next morning, I went to the police and filed a restraining order against him. I thought that would be the end of it. I thought I was finally safe. I was wrong. A week later, I was walking home from work when I saw him. He was standing across the street, watching me. I froze. He smiled at me, a chilling, unsettling smile. He started walking towards me. I ran. I ran as fast as I could, back to my apartment. I locked the door, bolted the windows, and hid in my bedroom. I stayed there for hours, too scared to move. Finally, I managed to calm down enough to call the police. They came and searched the area, but they couldn't find him. I was convinced he was still out there, watching me. I decided I couldn't stay in my apartment anymore. I packed my bags and went to stay with my sister. I thought I was safe there. But then, one night, I woke up to a noise in the house. I got out of bed and crept down the hallway. I could hear whispering coming from my sister's room. I peeked inside. Ethan was there. He was standing over my sister's bed, whispering something in her ear. My sister was asleep, but she had this strange, vacant look on her face. I ran into the room and grabbed Ethan. We wrestled for a few minutes, and he pushed me aside and ran out of the house. I immediately called the police. They came and took my sister to the hospital. It turned out that Ethan had been hypnotizing her. He'd been planting suggestions in her mind, telling her to do things. The police finally caught him a few days later. He was charged with stalking, harassment, and assault. But here's the thing. The craziest part of the whole story is that after Ethan was arrested, the police investigated him further. They discovered that Ethan wasn't his real name. He was actually a known con artist who had been using dating apps to find vulnerable women. He would then manipulate and control them, often for financial gain. He had a long history of similar behavior, but he'd always managed to evade capture. And get this, the recurring dream he told me about, the dark forest, the whispering, the figure in the shadows, it was all part of his act. He used it to build a connection with his victims, to make them feel like they were sharing something special with him. I was just another target. I still have nightmares about him. I see his face everywhere. I'm constantly looking over my shoulder, wondering if he's watching me. The whole thing has really messed me up. I don't know if I'll ever be able to trust anyone again. It's a scary world out there, and dating apps can be a dangerous place. You never really know who you're talking to. The whole experience, it just left me feeling empty and paranoid. It made me realize how easily someone can manipulate you, especially when you're looking for connection. The creepiest thing is I haven't felt safe since. What's worse, I found out later he was doing the same thing to other people, but he wasn't using dating apps. He was using the dark web to find his victims. I don't know what's worse, the fact that he was trying to control me, or the fact that he was doing it to so many other people. I'm still trying to heal from everything that happened, but it's hard. I keep thinking about what could have happened if I hadn't gotten out when I did. It's a constant reminder of how fragile safety can be. Okay, so, you know how everyone has that one app they just can't delete, even though it's basically a black hole for their time? For me, that's Hinge. I swear, I've tried to quit it, gone cold turkey, everything, but I always end up crawling back. This story is about one time I didn't crawl back. I ran. It started like any other Hinge interaction. Generic profile, decent pictures, the usual, I like hiking and tacos bio. His name was Mark, and honestly, he wasn't my type. Too clean cut, maybe? But I was bored, swiping aimlessly on a Sunday night, and his opening line was actually pretty funny. Something about being able to identify any breed of dog based solely on its bark. Weird, yeah, but it made me laugh, so I matched. We chatted for a few days, the conversation flowing surprisingly well. He seemed genuinely interested in what I had to say, asked thoughtful questions, and didn't immediately try to get me to send nudes, which is a win these days. He was a little intense, maybe. Responded super fast, remembered every detail I'd mentioned. But hey, some people are just really good at texting, right? He suggested we meet up. I was hesitant. I had a weird feeling about him, a little niggle in the back of my mind that I couldn't quite place. But my friends were pushing me to get out there, saying I was becoming a hermit. Plus, he suggested meeting at this cool little art gallery downtown that I'd been wanting to check out. Public place, lots of people, what could go wrong? The gallery was even cooler than I'd imagined. Modern art, mostly. Weird sculptures and paintings that made you think. I was actually enjoying myself, taking pictures and sending them to my friends. Then Mark showed up. He looked different in person, taller somehow, and his eyes were intense, like he was trying to see straight through me. He was wearing this really stiff, formal suit, which seemed out of place for a casual gallery visit. He kept touching my arm, my shoulder, just little fleeting touches, but they made my skin crawl. We walked around for a while, looking at the art. He didn't seem that interested, to be honest. He kept steering the conversation back to me, asking questions about my life, my dreams, my fears. It felt like an interrogation, not a date. And those touches kept happening, more frequently now, lingering a little longer each time. The weirdest part was when we got to this one exhibit. It was a series of photographs, all black and white, depicting these really creepy, decaying houses. They looked abandoned, haunted almost. I was drawn to them, fascinated by the decay and the sense of history. Mark, on the other hand, seemed genuinely disturbed. He grabbed my arm, his grip surprisingly strong, and pulled me away from the pictures. "Let's go," he said, his voice tight. "I don't like these." I tried to laugh it off, saying they were just pictures, but he wouldn't let it go. He insisted we leave, practically dragging me out of the gallery. I was starting to get really uncomfortable. He suggested we go for a drink. I wanted to say no, to just get away from him, but I was also a little scared of what he might do if I refused. So I agreed, figuring a crowded bar would be safer than wandering the streets alone with him. We went to this dimly lit bar a few blocks away. It was packed, loud music, people laughing and talking. I ordered a beer, trying to relax, but Mark just sat there, staring at me. He started talking about how much he liked me, how he felt a connection with me that he'd never felt with anyone else. He said he knew we were meant to be together. It was way too much, way too fast. I tried to tell him that I wasn't looking for anything serious, that I just wanted to have fun, but he didn't seem to hear me. He just kept talking, his voice getting louder, his eyes getting wider. Then he reached across the table and grabbed my hand. His hand was cold, clammy. He started stroking my palm with his thumb, his eyes fixed on mine. "I know you feel it too," he whispered. "I can see it in your eyes." I pulled my hand away, disgusted. "Mark, this is freaking me out," I said. "I think I should go." He didn't say anything. He just smiled, a slow, unsettling smile that didn't reach his eyes. He nodded towards the bar's back exit. "I'll walk you out," he said. I hesitated. The back exit seemed like a bad idea, but I was desperate to get away from him. I followed him through the crowded bar, past the flashing lights and the thumping music. He led me to a door marked "Employees Only." "This isn't the way out," I said, my voice trembling. He ignored me and opened the door. It led to a narrow, dimly lit alleyway. The air was cold and damp, and the only light came from a flickering street lamp at the end of the alley. I stopped, refusing to go any further. "Mark, I'm not going this way," I said. "I'm calling a cab." He turned to me, his face hidden in the shadows. "Don't you trust me?" he asked, his voice low and menacing. That's when I ran. I ran as fast as I could, back through the bar, out the front door, and into the street. I didn't stop running until I reached a busy street corner, where I flagged down a cab and practically threw myself inside. I didn't sleep that night. I kept seeing his face in my mind, those intense eyes, that unsettling smile. I deleted him from Hinge, blocked his number, and deactivated my social media accounts. I told my friends what happened, and they were all horrified. They told me I was lucky to have gotten away. For weeks, I was terrified. I kept looking over my shoulder, afraid he would find me. I had nightmares about him, about being trapped in that alleyway. I started carrying pepper spray, taking self-defense classes. I was a mess. Then one day, I got a message from a detective. He said they were investigating a series of disappearances in the area, young women who had gone missing after meeting someone on dating apps. They had found my name in one of the missing woman's phone contacts. I told the detective everything that happened with Mark. I showed him his Hinge profile, described the gallery, the bar, the alleyway. He took it all down, thanked me for my help, and told me they would keep me updated. A few weeks later, the detective called me back. They had found him. Mark was living in a remote cabin in the woods, surrounded by newspaper clippings about the missing women. They found evidence linking him to at least 3 of the disappearances. The detective told me that Mark had a history of mental illness. He had been obsessed with finding his soulmate, and he believed that the missing women were all part of some grand plan to find her. He thought he had found her in me. I was relieved, of course, that he had been caught, but I was also haunted by the thought of what might have happened if I hadn't run. A few months passed. I started to feel a little better, a little less afraid. I even started thinking about going back on Hinge. Then one day, I got a package in the mail. It was a small, unmarked box. I opened it cautiously, my heart pounding in my chest. Inside was a single black and white photograph. It was one of the pictures from the gallery, the creepy, decaying houses. On the back of the photograph, there was a handwritten note. It said, "I told you I didn't like these." And that's when I noticed something else, something that made my blood run cold. In the window of one of the houses, barely visible in the shadows, was a figure. A figure that looked just like me. But it couldn't be me. I was never there. Then it hit me. I remembered something Mark said at the gallery. He said he knew we were meant to be together. He said he could see it in my eyes. He wasn't just seeing me. He was seeing something else. He was seeing the house. The house he wanted to take me to. The house where I was already waiting. The photo wasn't a message from Mark. It was an invitation. From myself. And the chilling realization sunk in. I hadn't escaped him at all. He had just awakened something that was already inside me. Something far more terrifying than any Hinge date gone wrong. The real horror wasn't him. It was me. Okay, so listen up. I never thought I'd be one of those guys with a freaky online dating story. I always figured those were just made up for clicks and likes. But man, was I wrong. Dead wrong. It all started with Hinge, the app that's designed to be deleted. Right? Well, it deleted my sense of reality for a good couple of weeks. Buckle up, because this is going to get weird. I swiped right on this girl, Sarah. Her profile was pretty basic. Hiking pics, a blurry shot of her at a concert, and a bio that said something about good vibes only. Whatever. But she was cute, you know. Like, the kind of cute that makes you double take. Long dark hair, piercing blue eyes, a smile that seemed genuinely warm. So yeah, I swiped right. She matched me, and we started chatting. Small talk at first. What do you do? Where are you from? Favorite pizza topping? You know the drill. But things quickly got intense. She was super interested in me. Like really interested. Asking about my childhood, my dreams, my deepest fears. It was flattering, sure, but also a little off. We decided to meet up. She suggested this old bookstore downtown, the Dusty Tome. I'd never heard of it, but I figured, hey, what's the harm? It was a Saturday afternoon, broad daylight. I wasn't expecting anything creepy. When I got there, the bookstore was tucked away on a quiet side street. It looked like something out of a movie. Dusty windows, overflowing shelves, the kind of place that smelled like old paper and forgotten stories. Sarah was already inside, standing near the back, browsing a shelf of what looked like ancient tomes. She looked even better in person. That smile was even brighter, her eyes even bluer. We hugged, and she led me deeper into the store. The air was thick with the scent of aged paper and something else, something vaguely metallic, like old blood. I brushed it off. Probably just my imagination. We talked for hours. About everything and nothing. She listened intently, hanging on my every word. It felt intoxicating. Like I was the most interesting person in the world. But there was something unsettling about her gaze. It felt like she was looking through me, into some hidden part of my soul. Over the next few weeks, we became inseparable. We went on hikes, saw movies, ate at hole-in-the-wall restaurants. She knew all the best places, the hidden gems that only locals knew about. It was like she'd been studying me, figuring out exactly what I wanted before I even knew it myself. She always wanted to meet at my apartment. She said she felt more comfortable there. At first, I was flattered, but then I started noticing things. Small things. Things that didn't quite add up. Like the fact that she always seemed to know where things were in my apartment, even if I hadn't told her. Or the way she would sometimes stare into space. Her eyes glazed over, like she was seeing something I couldn't. Then there was the dream. I had this recurring dream where I was standing in that bookstore, the Dusty Tome, but the shelves were filled with empty frames instead of books. And Sarah was standing at the end of the aisle, beckoning me forward, her smile wrong. One night, I woke up in a cold sweat after having that dream again. Sarah was asleep next to me, her breathing shallow and even. I watched her for a long time, trying to shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. I decided to do some digging. I looked her up online, trying to find her social media profiles. Nothing. No Facebook, no Instagram, no Twitter. It was like she didn't exist before she matched with me on Hinge. Then I remembered the Dusty Tome, the bookstore where we first met. I decided to pay it a visit, hoping to find some answers. When I got there, the store was gone. The building was boarded up, with a for sale sign hanging in the window. I asked around, talking to the shopkeepers on the street. No one remembered a bookstore ever being there. They looked at me like I was crazy. That's when I started to panic. Who was Sarah? What did she want? And why did she seem to know so much about me? I went back to my apartment, my heart pounding in my chest. Sarah was there, waiting for me. She was sitting on the couch, reading a book. She looked up when I came in, her smile as warm and inviting as ever. "Where have you been?" she asked, her voice soft and melodic. I went to the bookstore," I said, my voice trembling. "The dusty tome. But it's gone. It doesn't exist." Her smile faltered for a moment, then returned, even brighter than before. "Of course it exists," she said. "It's right here." She gestured around the room, and that's when I saw it. My apartment, it wasn't my apartment anymore. It was a replica of the dusty tome. The shelves were filled with books, the air thick with the scent of old paper and that metallic tang I remembered from our first meeting. And then I looked in the mirror, and I saw that my reflection wasn't me. It was her, Sarah, wearing my face. She had been living inside me the whole time, slowly taking over my life, my memories, my identity. She wasn't interested in me. She was interested in becoming me. The real me was trapped somewhere deep inside, a prisoner in my own mind. And Sarah was about to erase me completely. She lunged at me, her eyes burning with a cold, predatory light. I tried to fight her, but it was no use. She was too strong, too ingrained in my being. As she pinned me to the ground, I saw a glint of metal in her hand, a small, antique-looking letter opener with a handle shaped like a serpent. She raised the letter opener above my head, her smile widening into a grotesque parody of human joy. "Good vibes only," she whispered, and then plunged the letter opener into my chest. The pain was excruciating, but it was over quickly. As my vision faded to black, I saw Sarah standing over my body, her face morphing back into her own. And then everything went silent. I woke up in my bed, drenched in sweat. The sun was streaming through the window, and the birds were singing outside. It was just a dream, a terrible, horrifying dream. But as I got out of bed, I noticed something on my nightstand, a small, antique-looking letter opener with a handle shaped like a serpent. You know how sometimes you get that weird feeling, like something's just off? Yeah, well, that's how this whole thing started. I downloaded Hinge, like, ages ago, mostly 'cause my friends were on it and I was bored. I wasn't really expecting anything, you know? Just swiping and hoping someone cute and normal would pop up. I got way more than I bargained for. I swiped right on this girl, Sarah. Her profile was pretty basic. Hiking pics, a blurry photo with her dog, and a prompt about her favorite pizza topping, pineapple, EW, but whatever. She was cute, though, with this kind of quirky smile. We matched, and I felt a small rush of excitement. Score. We started chatting, and things were going pretty well. We had a lot in common, like trashy reality TV and hating early mornings. She seemed really down to earth, which was a massive plus. After a week or so of talking, she suggested we meet up. I was a little hesitant. I mean, you never really know who you're talking to online, right? But she seemed legit, and I figured, what the heck? So we made plans to grab coffee at this cafe near my apartment. The day of the date, I was actually nervous. I spent way too long trying to decide what to wear, finally settling on a band tee and jeans. I got to the cafe a few minutes early and snagged a table by the window. I kept checking my phone, rereading our messages, trying to calm my nerves. Then she walked in, and that's when the weirdness started. It wasn't that she wasn't cute, because she was, even more so in person. It was something else. Her eyes were too intense, like they were staring right through me. And she had this strange, almost unsettling smile, like she knew something I didn't. We ordered our coffees and started talking, but the conversation felt forced. She kept asking me really personal questions, stuff you wouldn't usually ask on a first date. Like, what are my biggest fears? What are my dreams? What keeps me up at night? I tried to brush it off with jokes, but she just stared at me, waiting for an answer. The more we talked, the more uncomfortable I became. She seemed to know things about me that I hadn't told her. She knew about this embarrassing thing I did in middle school, a secret I'd only told one person, who I hadn't spoken to in years. She somehow knew about my childhood fear of the dark. It was freaking me out. I tried to steer the conversation to lighter topics, but she always brought it back to me. digging deeper and deeper into my psyche. I started to feel like she was trying to dissect me, piece by piece. I could feel myself getting anxious. The air felt thick. After what felt like an eternity, I made an excuse to leave. I told her I had an early meeting the next day and needed to get home. She didn't argue, but her smile widened, and she said, "I understand, but we'll see each other again soon." Her words sent a chill down my spine. I paid for my coffee and practically ran out of the cafe. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I kept looking over my shoulder as I walked home, convinced that she was following me. When I finally got to my apartment, I locked the door and closed all the blinds. I didn't sleep that night. Every creak of the building, every rustle outside my window, sent my heart racing. The next few days were a blur of anxiety. I avoided going out, convinced that Sarah was waiting for me somewhere. I kept replaying the date in my head, trying to figure out what had happened. Was I just being paranoid? Was she just a little quirky? Or was there something seriously wrong with her? Then, I got a message from her on Hinge. It was just a single word: soon. That was it. I decided I needed to do something. I couldn't keep living like this, afraid of my own shadow. I did some digging online, trying to find out more about her. Her Hinge profile was pretty vague, but I managed to find her Facebook page. It was mostly pictures of nature and stuff, but there was one photo that caught my eye. It was a picture of her standing in front of a house, an old, Victorian-style house that looked oddly familiar. I zoomed in on the picture, and my blood ran cold. It was my house, the house I grew up in, before my parents sold it when I was a teenager. The house I hadn't thought about in years. I felt sick. How did she know about my childhood home? Why was she so interested in me? I decided to drive by the house. I know, it was a stupid idea, but I had to see for myself. I drove to the old neighborhood and slowly cruised down the street. And there it was, my old house, looking exactly as I remembered it. Then I saw her. She was standing on the porch, staring at me. She smiled that unsettling smile, and then she walked inside. I slammed on the gas and sped away. I didn't stop driving until I was miles away from that house. I went to the police. I told them everything, but they said there was nothing they could do. I didn't have any proof that she was doing anything illegal. They said she was probably just a weirdo with a crush, but I knew it was more than that. I could feel it in my gut. I decided to take matters into my own hands. I knew I had to confront her, to find out what she wanted from me. I drove back to my old house. I parked down the street and walked towards the porch. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. I knocked on the door. She opened it almost immediately. She was wearing a long, white dress, and her hair was pulled back in a tight bun. She looked like she was from another era. "I've been waiting for you," she said, her voice soft and melodic. "What do you want?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She smiled. "I want you to remember." "Remember what?" "The truth." She led me inside the house. It was exactly as I remembered it, but also different. It was like stepping back in time, but also seeing the house through someone else's eyes. She led me to the attic. It was dusty and filled with old boxes and furniture. She pointed to a corner of the room. "Look," she said. I looked, and I saw something that made my blood run cold. It was a photo album, an old photo album that I hadn't seen in years. I picked it up and started flipping through the pages. It was filled with pictures of me as a child, playing in the house, celebrating birthdays, spending time with my family. But then I turned a page, and I saw a picture that I didn't recognize. It was a picture of me, but I was older. I was standing in the attic, and I was holding a knife. And standing in front of me, covered in blood, was Sarah. I stared at the picture in disbelief. It couldn't be real. It had to be a trick. But then I remembered. I remembered the fights, the arguments, the years of resentment. I remembered the night I snapped, the night I lost control. I remembered the knife, the blood, the screams. I remembered killing Sarah. But that wasn't the twist. The real twist was what happened after. My family, devastated, covered up the murder. They staged it to look like an accident and moved away. They wanted to protect me, to give me a second chance. And they did. I forgot everything. My mind blocked out the trauma, creating a new reality where Sarah never existed. But she did exist. And she never forgot. Sarah was my imaginary friend that I created as a child. But when I killed her, she possessed my body. And now I'm back to finish what I started. And she brought me here for a reason, to punish myself. You know how everyone's got that one app there, like, totally addicted to? For me, it was Hinge. Not even for, like, finding the one or anything. Just, mindless swiping when I was bored. I told myself it was just for entertainment, people watching. But deep down, I guess I was hoping to find someone real. This is about how that almost became my biggest regret. It started like any other Tuesday night. I was sprawled out on my bed, procrastinating on a history assignment, and mindlessly scrolling through Hinge. You know the drill. Curated profiles, filtered pics, the whole shebang. Then I saw him. His name was, let's call him Daniel. His profile was different from the others. No cheesy gym selfies. No group pics where you had to guess which one he was. Just a few pictures of him hiking, one of him playing guitar, and a really cute one of him with a dog. He looked normal, real, like someone I could actually talk to. His bio was short and sweet. Looking for someone to explore the city with. Simple, right? I thought so too. I sent him a like, not really expecting anything to come of it. To my surprise, he matched with me almost instantly. We started chatting, and it felt easy. We talked about everything: music, movies, books, our families. He was funny, intelligent, and actually seemed interested in what I had to say. It was refreshing, especially compared to the usual hey and unanswered questions I usually got on dating apps. After a few days of nonstop texting, he suggested we meet up. I was hesitant at first. I mean, meeting strangers from the internet is always a little nerve-wracking, right? But something about him felt different. He seemed genuine, not like the creepy guys I'd encountered before. We decided to meet at a small coffee shop near my apartment. I got there early, fiddling with my phone and trying to calm my racing heart. He showed up right on time, and he looked even better in person. He had this kind smile and warm eyes that made me feel instantly at ease. The date went great. We talked for hours, laughing and sharing stories. He was even more charming and witty in person than he was online. He walked me home afterward, and we stood outside my building for a while, just talking. Before he left, he leaned in and kissed me. It was perfect. We started seeing each other regularly after that. We went to movies, concerts, and even took a day trip to a nearby town. He was everything I thought I wanted in a boyfriend: kind, funny, intelligent, and genuinely interested in me. But as time went on, things started to get weird. Subtle things at first, things I could easily dismiss as me being paranoid. He started showing up at places I hadn't told him I was going to be. Once, I was at a bookstore browsing, and I turned around to find him standing behind me. He said he just happened to be in the area, but it felt off. Then there were the phone calls. I'd get calls from unknown numbers, and when I answered, there would be silence on the other end. I brushed it off as wrong numbers or spam, but it started happening more and more frequently. The biggest red flag was his reaction when I mentioned my family. I'm really close to my parents and my younger sister, and I told him about them early on. But whenever I brought them up, he would change the subject or act distant. He said he wasn't really a family person and didn't want to get into it. I tried to ignore the warning signs. I was so caught up in the whirlwind of the relationship that I didn't want to admit that something was wrong. I told myself I was overreacting, that he was just a little quirky. One night, I was at his apartment. We were watching a movie, and I went to the kitchen to get some water. As I was filling my glass, I noticed a drawer slightly ajar. Curiosity got the better of me, and I opened it. Inside, there were stacks of photos. Photos of me. Photos taken without my knowledge. Photos of me walking to class, getting coffee, even just sitting in my apartment window. My blood ran cold. I slammed the drawer shut and walked back to the living room, trying to act normal. I made some excuse about not feeling well and left. I didn't say a word about the photos. I went home and locked myself in my room, my mind racing. I scrolled back through our text messages, looking for any other clues I might have missed. That's when I found it. Buried deep in our chat history was a message I had completely forgotten about. It was one of the first messages he had sent me after we matched. He had asked me what my favorite coffee shop was. I had told him the name of the one near my apartment. But here's the thing. I hadn't mentioned that coffee shop on my profile. I hadn't even checked in there on social media. There was no way he could have known I went there unless he was already watching me. I called the police. They took my statement, but they said they couldn't do anything without more evidence. They suggested I stay with a friend or family member for a while. I spent the next few weeks living in fear. I changed my locks, installed security cameras, and avoided going out alone. I was constantly looking over my shoulder, convinced that he was watching me. Then one day, I got a package in the mail. It was a small, unmarked box. I hesitated for a long time before opening it. Inside, there was a single photograph. It was a picture of Daniel, but it wasn't a picture I had ever seen before. It was an old photo, faded and worn. On the back, there was a name written in shaky handwriting. The name wasn't Daniel. It was the name of a man who had been convicted of stalking and harassing several women years ago. A man who had been released from prison just a few months before I matched with Daniel on Hinge. I contacted the police again. This time, they took it seriously. They launched a full investigation and tracked him down. He was arrested and charged with stalking, harassment, and violating his parole. It turned out that he had been using a fake profile on Hinge to find new victims. He had been watching me for weeks, collecting information and planning his next move. I was terrified, but I was also relieved. He was finally behind bars, and I was safe. Or so I thought. A few months later, I was at the grocery store. I was pushing my cart down the aisle when I saw someone familiar. It was Daniel's dog, the cute little golden retriever he had in his profile picture. The dog was wagging its tail, looking up at its owner. And then I saw him. The man walking the dog wasn't Daniel. It was an older man, with gray hair and a kind face. He looked like a normal, everyday grandpa. He smiled at me as I passed by. "Beautiful dog, isn't he?" he said. I mumbled something in response and hurried away, my heart pounding in my chest. I knew that dog. I had petted that dog. I had seen that dog in Daniel's apartment. But then it hit me. Daniel had told me he had gotten the dog from a local animal shelter. He had said he had always wanted a dog, but he had never had the chance. But what if he hadn't gotten the dog from a shelter? What if he had gotten the dog from the older man? What if the older man wasn't just a random dog owner? What if he was Daniel's accomplice? What if he was the one who had been helping Daniel stalk me all along? I stopped in the middle of the aisle, frozen in fear. I looked back, but the man and the dog were gone. That's when I realized the truth. Daniel wasn't just some random stalker. He was part of something bigger, something more sinister. And I was still in danger. Because if the old man was helping Daniel, then who was helping the old man? That's when I saw it. Reflected in the polished chrome of a nearby freezer, I saw a familiar face. A face I'd seen countless times on my phone screen. A face I thought I knew. It was my own reflection. But it wasn't just my reflection. It was me, but different. A subtle shift in the eyes, a slight tightening of the lips, a look of cold, calculating malice. And then I understood. There was no Daniel. There was no old man. There was only me. I had created the whole thing in my head. The stalking, the harassment, the fear. It was all a product of my own paranoia, my own insecurities, my own desperate need for attention. I was so obsessed with finding someone to love me that I had created a monster to haunt me. And the worst part is, the monster was still inside me, waiting to be unleashed. This is going to sound totally insane, but swear to God, it actually happened. I'm still trying to wrap my head around it, and I figured writing it down might, help me process. It all started with Hinge, because, where else does anything start these days? I was bored, scrolling through profiles, doing the usual judge wife thing we all do, when I saw her. Sarah. She was different. Not like trying too hard to be quirky different, but genuinely intriguing. Her pictures weren't the usual filtered selfies. One was her hiking, covered in mud and grinning. Another was her painting, her face smudged with vibrant colors. Her bio was short and sweet, looking for someone to explore hidden corners with. Something about it just clicked. I swiped right. We matched almost instantly, which, let's be real, Never happens. We started chatting, and it felt easy. Like I'd known her forever. We talked about everything, from our favorite bands to our weirdest childhood memories. She was funny, smart, and surprisingly down to earth. After a few days of nonstop texting, she suggested we meet up. I was stoked, but also kinda nervous. You know how it is. You build up this image of someone in your head, and then they turn out to be completely different in person. But I figured, what the heck, I had nothing to lose. We decided to meet at this old bookstore downtown. It's one of those places that smells like old paper and forgotten dreams. The kind of place I could spend hours just wandering around. I got there a few minutes early, my heart pounding in my chest. I spotted her almost immediately. She was even more beautiful in person. Her eyes were this crazy shade of green, and she had this smile that could light up a room. We hugged, and then we just started talking, like we hadn't seen each other in ages. We spent hours browsing the shelves, discovering hidden gems, and laughing at cheesy book titles. After the bookstore, we went for coffee, then for a walk in the park. It felt like we were in our own little world. I was completely and utterly smitten. We started seeing each other all the time. Hiking, going to concerts, trying new restaurants. She was adventurous and spontaneous, always up for anything. She introduced me to all sorts of new things, opened my eyes to a whole different way of looking at the world. I felt like I was finally living my life to the fullest. But then, things started to get weird. It started small. Little things, like Sarah knowing things about me that I hadn't told her. Once, we were talking about my childhood, and she mentioned this specific toy I used to have, a beat-up old teddy bear named Barnaby. I hadn't thought about Barnaby in years, and I definitely hadn't mentioned him to Sarah. When I asked her how she knew about him, she just shrugged and said, "I don't know. I just had a feeling." Then there were the dreams. I started having these incredibly vivid dreams, where I was in this old, creepy house. The house felt familiar, like I'd been there before, but I couldn't place it. In the dreams, Sarah was always there, but she was different. Cold, distant, almost menacing. I tried to brush it off, chalk it up to stress or a weird coincidence. But the feeling of unease kept growing. One night, we were at her apartment, watching a movie. I went to the bathroom, and when I came back, Sarah was standing by the window, staring out into the darkness. Her back was to me, and she was completely still. "Sarah," I said. She didn't respond. I walked closer, and that's when I saw it. Reflected in the glass of the window, I saw her face. But it wasn't Sarah's face. It was distorted, twisted, like something was trying to break through. I gasped, and Sarah turned around. Her face was normal again, her eyes filled with concern. "Are you okay?" she asked. I thought I saw something." I stammered. She frowned. "Saw what?" "Nothing," I said quickly. "Just my imagination." But I knew I hadn't imagined it. I knew something was wrong. I started doing some digging. I looked up Sarah online, trying to find more information about her. But there was nothing. No social media, no old school pictures, no trace of her existence before Hinge. It was like she'd appeared out of thin air. That's when I decided to do the unthinkable. I decided to go to her apartment when she wasn't there. I know. It was a total invasion of privacy. But I was desperate. I needed to know what was going on. I waited until I knew she was at work. Then I drove to her place. I picked the lock. I'm surprisingly good at that sort of thing, and slipped inside. The apartment was strange. It was clean and tidy, but there was something unsettling about it. It felt sterile and personal, like no one actually lived there. I started searching, opening drawers, looking through closets. I found nothing. No photos, no personal items, nothing that could give me a clue about who Sarah really was. Then I found it. Tucked away in the back of a closet, hidden beneath a pile of old clothes, was a box. I pulled it out and opened it. Inside, I found a stack of old letters, all addressed to Sarah. But the letters weren't recent. They were dated from the 1920s. I started reading them, and my blood ran cold. The letters were from a man named Thomas, who was madly in love with Sarah. He wrote about their secret meetings, their stolen moments, their dreams of a life together. But then, the letters took a dark turn. Thomas wrote about how Sarah was changing, how she was becoming obsessed with the occult, how she was talking about things he didn't understand. He wrote about being afraid of her. The last letter was the most chilling. In it, Thomas wrote about how he was going to leave Sarah, how he couldn't be with her anymore. He said he knew she wouldn't let him go easily. I flipped through the rest of the box and found a faded newspaper clipping. The headline read, "Local man disappears without a trace." The article went on to say that Thomas had vanished without a word, leaving behind his family and friends. I knew then. I knew who Sarah really was. She wasn't just some girl I met on Hinge. She was something else. Something ancient. Something evil. I ran out of the apartment, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't go to the police. Who would believe me? I decided to confront her. I called her and told her I needed to see her. I told her it was urgent. We met at the bookstore where we'd had our first date. She looked beautiful, but I could see something different in her eyes. Something cold and calculating. "What's wrong?" she asked, her voice too sweet, too innocent. "I know who you are," I said, my voice shaking. "I know about Thomas. I know about the letters." Her face didn't change. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said. "Don't lie to me," I said. "I know you're not who you say you are." She smiled, and it was the most terrifying thing I'd ever seen. "You're right," she said. "I'm not." And then she transformed. Her face twisted and contorted. Her eyes glowed with an unholy light, and her voice became a guttural snarl. I screamed and stumbled backward, knocking over a shelf of books. I turned and ran, not stopping until I was out of the store and into the street. I never saw Sarah again. I changed my number, deleted my Hinge account, and moved to a different city. I still have nightmares about her twisted face, and her cold, dead eyes. But here's the thing, the weirdest part of the whole story. A few weeks after I moved, I was unpacking some boxes when I found an old photo album. It was my great-grandmother's. I started flipping through it, looking at pictures of people I'd never met. And then I saw her. In one of the pictures, standing next to my great-grandmother, was Sarah, young, vibrant, and beautiful. The picture was dated from the 1920s, and on the back of the photo, in my great-grandmother's handwriting, was a single word: friend. I don't know what to make of it. Was Sarah a monster? Or was she something else entirely? Something that had been a part of my family for generations? I still don't have the answers, and I don't know if I ever will. But one thing I do know, I'll never swipe right again. The app was Hinge. I know, super basic. But after my last breakup, I was determined to put myself out there. Swiping felt way easier than actually talking to people in real life. Plus, the profiles were hilarious. Anyway, I matched with this girl named Sarah. Her profile was pretty normal. Cute pictures, funny prompts. We started chatting, and she seemed totally cool. We had a lot in common, liked the same music, hated the same reality TV shows. After a week of talking, we decided to meet up. We planned to go to this new cafe downtown. I was actually excited, which was rare for me. I got there a little early and waited outside. And waited. And waited. She was like 20 minutes late, which, okay, whatever. Things happen. I texted her, "Hey, you still coming?" No response. Another 20 minutes went by. I was starting to get annoyed. I texted again, a little ruder this time. Still nothing. Finally, after an hour, I gave up and went home. I was pretty bummed, but figured she just ghosted me. It happens, right? The next day, I opened Hinge and saw a message from Sarah. "So sorry I missed our date. Something crazy came up. Can we reschedule?" I was hesitant, but she seemed genuinely apologetic. And honestly, I was still a little interested. So I said yes. We planned to meet the following week at a different cafe, closer to her place. This time, she was on time. I saw her sitting at a table as I walked in. She looked exactly like her pictures, maybe even prettier. We hugged hello, and I immediately felt relieved. Maybe this could actually work. We talked for hours. She was funny, smart, and easy to talk to. We laughed a lot, and I felt a real connection. As the date went on, though, I started to notice some weird things. First, she kept glancing over my shoulder, like she was expecting someone. Every time I asked what she was looking at, she'd just say, "Oh, nothing." Then, she started asking me really personal questions, like about my family, where I lived, what my daily routine was like. It felt a little intense for a second date, but the strangest thing was her hands. She kept fidgeting with them, twisting her rings, tapping her fingers on the table, and her nails were bitten down to the quick. It was like she was incredibly nervous. As we were leaving, she hugged me again, a little too tightly this time. She whispered in my ear, "Thank you for meeting me. You have no idea how much I needed this." I didn't know what she meant, but I brushed it off. Maybe she was just going through something. The next few days were a blur. We texted constantly, and I started to feel like I was falling for her. We made plans to hang out again the following weekend. Then, I got a weird message from her. It was late at night, and I was already in bed. The message said, "Don't come to my apartment. I'm not safe." I was immediately freaked out. I called her, but she didn't answer. I texted her again, asking what was going on, but she didn't respond. I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying our dates in my head, trying to figure out what was going on. Was she in danger? Was she being stalked? Was this some kind of elaborate prank? The next morning, I went to her apartment. I figured I had to see if she was okay. I knocked on the door, but no one answered. I tried the doorknob, and to my surprise, it was unlocked. I hesitated for a moment, then pushed the door open. The apartment was dark and quiet. I called out her name, but there was no response. I walked inside, my heart pounding in my chest. The apartment was a mess. Clothes were scattered on the floor, dishes were piled in the sink, and there were empty pizza boxes everywhere. Then, I saw something that made my blood run cold. On the living room wall, someone had written a message in red paint. It said, "She's not who you think she is." I backed away slowly, my mind racing. What did that mean? Who was Sarah really? I turned to leave, but then I noticed something else. On the coffee table, there was a stack of photos. I picked them up and started flipping through them. They were pictures of me. Me at the cafe. Me walking down the street. Me leaving my apartment. Someone had been following me. I dropped the photos and ran out of the apartment, terrified. I didn't know who Sarah was, but I knew I had to get away from her. I went straight to the police and told them everything. They took my statement and said they would investigate. Days turned into weeks, and I didn't hear anything from the police. I was constantly looking over my shoulder, afraid that Sarah was watching me. I started having nightmares. I would dream that she was standing over my bed, her eyes glowing in the dark. Finally, one day, I got a call from the police. They said they had found Sarah. She was in a mental hospital. They explained that Sarah had a severe mental illness. She had been obsessed with me for months, even before we matched on Hinge. She had created a fake profile and manipulated me into going on dates with her. The police said that Sarah was not a danger to me anymore. She was getting the help she needed. I was relieved, but also angry. I had been so vulnerable, so trusting, and she had taken advantage of me. But as I thought about it more, I realized that Sarah was also a victim. She was a victim of her own mind. She was trapped in a world of delusion and paranoia. I still think about Sarah sometimes. I wonder if she's getting better. I wonder if she ever thinks about me. And I wonder if I'll ever be able to trust someone again. The whole experience really messed with my head. I deleted Hinge, obviously. I still get nervous meeting new people. It's like, how do you ever really know who someone is? The weirdest part is this. After the police investigation, they found out that Sarah had a roommate. The roommate was never around, apparently, always traveling for work. The police couldn't get in touch with them for a while. When they finally did, they showed me the roommate's picture. It was the girl I originally matched with. The one whose pictures and prompts were actually funny and cool. The one who never actually showed up for our first date. So basically, I didn't even go out with the real Sarah. I went out with some other random person who was using her photos, which means the real Sarah is still out there, somewhere, and I have no idea who she is or what she looks like. That thought still gives me the creeps. Maybe she saw the whole thing. Maybe she was too scared to say anything. I honestly don't know, but the whole thing is messed up. I hope I never have to go through anything like that ever again. Okay, so I never thought I'd be the kind of person with a legit horror story, you know? I always rolled my eyes at those true crime podcasts, thinking people were just making stuff up for attention. But, yeah, I was wrong. Dead wrong. This happened last summer, and honestly, I still get goosebumps thinking about it. It all started with a dating app, Hinge, to be exact. I was bored, newly single, and figured why not? What's the worst that could happen? Famous last words, right? I was swiping away one night, not really paying attention, when this profile popped up. Ethan, it said. His pictures weren't anything special, just some blurry shots of him hiking. Another one with his dog, a golden retriever. Cute, I'll admit. And one of them smiling awkwardly at the camera. He wasn't like model gorgeous, but he had this kind of, I don't know, normal vibe about him that was actually kind of appealing. His bio was simple. Just looking for someone to explore the city with. Okay, seemed harmless enough. We matched, and he messaged me almost immediately. The conversation was easy, breezy, just the usual getting to know you stuff. He asked about my interests, my job. I work as a barista in a small coffee shop, and what I like to do for fun. He seemed genuinely interested, which was a nice change from the usual, hey, wanna hook up? Messages I'd been getting. After a few days of chatting, he asked if I wanted to grab coffee. The date itself was fine. He was a little quiet, maybe a bit shy, but he was polite and held the door open for me. We talked about movies, music, and our families. Nothing too deep, nothing too exciting, but there was something off. I couldn't quite put my finger on it. He kept looking around, like he was expecting someone to jump out, and his eyes, they were this really intense shade of blue, almost unsettling. We went out a few more times. Each date was pretty much the same. Polite conversation, a strange undercurrent of unease, and those piercing blue eyes. He always chose secluded places, a small, dimly lit bar, a park late at night, an out-of-the-way bookstore. I started to feel a little uncomfortable. I tried to brush it off as just my anxiety acting up, but the feeling persisted. One night, he suggested we go for a drive. He said he wanted to show me this amazing view, overlooking the city. I hesitated. I really wasn't feeling it, but I didn't want to be rude. Plus, I was kind of curious about what this amazing view was. So I agreed. We drove for what felt like forever, winding through these dark, deserted roads. The only light came from the headlights of his car and the occasional street lamp. The silence in the car was thick, heavy. I tried to make conversation, but he just gave me short, monosyllabic answers. My anxiety started to creep up again. Finally, he pulled over to the side of the road. "Here we are," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I looked out the window. It was pitch black. I couldn't see anything. "Ethan, where are we?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. "Just wait," he said, a strange smile spreading across his face. He got out of the car and walked around to my side. He opened the door for me and took my hand. His grip was surprisingly strong. "Come on," he said, pulling me out of the car. "I want to show you something." He led me through the darkness, stumbling over rocks and branches. I could hear the wind whistling through the trees and the distant sound of traffic. I was terrified. I had no idea where we were going or what he was planning. After what seemed like an eternity, we reached a clearing, and there it was, the amazing view. The city lights twinkled below us, a glittering tapestry of light and shadow. It was beautiful, I'll admit, but I was too scared to appreciate it. I turned to Ethan, but he wasn't looking at the view. He was staring at me, his blue eyes glowing in the darkness. His smile had widened, revealing his teeth. They looked sharp. "Do you like it?" he asked, his voice low and husky. "It's nice," I stammered, trying to pull my hand away from his. He tightened his grip. "I brought you here for a reason," he said. My heart pounded in my chest. I knew something was terribly wrong. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He leaned in close, his breath hot on my face. "I've been watching you," he whispered, "for a long time." I froze. He'd been watching me? "How?" "I know everything about you," he continued. "Your job, your friends, your family, everything." I tried to scream, but no sound came out. I was paralyzed with fear. He reached into his pocket and pulled out something small and silver. It glinted in the moonlight. A knife. Don't worry, he said, his voice eerily calm. It'll be over soon. I closed my eyes, bracing myself for the worst. But then nothing happened. I slowly opened my eyes. Ethan was still standing there, the knife still in his hand. But he wasn't looking at me. He was staring at something behind me, his eyes wide with terror. "Who are you?" he whispered, his voice trembling. I turned around, and that's when I saw her, standing in the shadows, her face hidden by the darkness. But I knew who she was. My twin sister, the one I thought was dead. She stepped forward, her eyes fixed on Ethan. "He's not worth it," she said, her voice cold and deadly. "Let him go." Ethan dropped the knife and ran. He ran as fast as he could, disappearing into the darkness. I stood there, stunned. My sister alive? After all these years? She turned to me, a faint smile on her face. "Hey," she said. "Long time no see." It turned out she hadn't died in that accident. She had amnesia and had been living under another name. She had seen me on Hinge and knew something was wrong and had been tracking Ethan to protect me. It was the craziest reunion ever. I don't use Hinge anymore, and I definitely don't go on late-night drives with strangers. My sister and I are slowly rebuilding our relationship. It's weird, I know, but the whole thing has made us closer, like we have some messed-up secret bond now. I still have nightmares about Ethan, but knowing my sister is out there, watching my back, makes me feel a little bit safer. It's like something straight out of a movie, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. It's insane, right?